My name is Amber, 32, and I stared in disbelief at my phone as photos flooded my social media feed. My family posed happily at the beachfront resort in Hawaii that we'd talked about visiting together for years, without me. 2 months ago, when my parents said I could join their family vacation, only if I paid my own way, all $4,000 of it I declined. What they didn't know was that I'd secretly booked my own trip to the same resort, arriving 3 days before them with someone they'd never expect. I still remember the shock on their faces when they walked into that resort restaurant and saw me sitting there. Before I tell you how this all unfolded, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. My family drama happened in California, but these dynamics exist everywhere. Hit that like button if you've ever felt like the odd one out in your family, and subscribe to join our community of people healing from family wounds. Now, let me take you back to where this all began. Growing up as the middle child between my older sister Stephanie and younger brother Kyle was never easy. From early on, there was an unspoken hierarchy in our family, with Stephanie as the golden child who could do no wrong, me in the forgotten middle, and Kyle as the baby who needed protection and support. I tried not to let it bother me, but over the years, the pattern became impossible to ignore. When Stephanie turned 18, my parents paid for her entire college education at a prestigious private university. 4 years of tuition, room and board, even spending money, all covered. They threw her a massive graduation party when she finished, inviting everyone they knew to celebrate her achievement. My dad gave a tearful speech about how proud they were to have given her every opportunity to succeed. 3 years later, when it was my turn for college, the conversation was very different. "We can help with half your tuition," my mother explained, "but you'll need to take out loans for the rest and work part-time for your expenses." I didn't complain. I understood finances could change and assumed they were tightening their belts. I worked 20 hours a week at a campus coffee shop while maintaining a full course load, often studying until 2 in the morning to keep my grades up. But then came Kyle's turn. Suddenly, the money flowed again. Not only did they cover his entire education just like Stephanie's, but they also bought him a car so he wouldn't have to waste time on public transportation. When I mentioned the disparity once at Sunday dinner, my mother simply said, "You've always been more independent, Amber. We knew you could handle it." Independence wasn't something I'd chosen, it was something I'd been forced into. But I swallowed my hurt and focused on building my career as a dental hygienist. The pattern continued as we entered adulthood. When Stephanie got married, my parents contributed $30,000 toward her wedding. They helped her and her husband with the down payment on their first house. When Kyle started his career in marketing, they paid for a professional wardrobe and subsidized his rent in an expensive neighborhood to help him network with the right people. Meanwhile, I was still paying off my student loans and living with a roommate in a small apartment. When I bought my first car used with 100,000 miles on it, I did it entirely on my own. When I needed dental surgery not covered by insurance, I put it on a credit card and worked extra shifts to pay it off. I tried not to be bitter. I told myself they were proud of my self-sufficiency. Maybe they saw something stronger in me than in my siblings. Maybe they were preparing me better for the real world. I clung to these rationalizations even as evidence mounted to the contrary. Last March, we gathered at my parents' house for my father's 60th birthday. After dinner, as we sat in the living room with coffee and cake, my mother brought up the idea of a family vacation. "Your father and I have been thinking," she announced with excitement in her eyes. "We'd like to take a big family trip to Hawaii this summer. We've always talked about going, and now that Kyle's gotten this wonderful new job, it seems like the perfect time to celebrate." My heart lifted. A family vacation. Maybe this would be a chance to finally feel included, to strengthen our bonds and create new memories together. I had 2 weeks of vacation time saved up that I'd been wondering how to use. "That sounds amazing," I said, already imagining us all on the beach together. "When were you thinking of going?" "We're looking at the first 2 weeks of August," my father replied. "The Wailea Beach Resort in Maui. It's supposed to be incredible." "I can request the time off tomorrow," I said, pulling out my phone to mark the dates. My mother exchanged a quick glance with my father that I nearly missed. Well, about that, she said, her voice taking on the careful tone I'd come to recognize over the years. We're covering the trip for Kyle to celebrate his new position, and of course for Stephanie and Mark since they've been under so much stress with the twins. She paused, then added casually, as if it were an afterthought. You're welcome to join us, of course, Amber, if you can manage your own expenses. The package is about $4,000 per person, but it includes almost everything. The room went silent. $4,000. More than 2 months' rent. More than I'd spent on my last vacation over 3 years ago. I see, I said, struggling to keep my voice neutral. That's a bit out of my budget right now with the dental work I just had done. But you all have a wonderful time. Are you sure? My father asked, but there was relief in his voice. We'd love to have you along. Absolutely, I lied. I've got some other plans I've been considering anyway. The conversation quickly moved on to flight options and excursions, as if my exclusion was a minor detail already resolved. Kyle shot me a sympathetic look, but said nothing. Stephanie was busy showing our mother photos of the resort she'd already looked up on her phone. I left an hour later, maintaining my composure until I got into my car. Then the tears came. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about being the only one asked to pay. It was about being an optional addition to a family vacation. The next day, I called my best friend Tara and told her everything. That's messed up, she said bluntly. They're not even trying to hide the favoritism anymore. Maybe I'm overreacting, I said, still trying to make excuses for them. Maybe they really are tight on money. If they were tight on money, they wouldn't be taking a luxury vacation to Hawaii, Tara pointed out. And they certainly wouldn't be paying for your brother's girlfriend to go. They'd scale back and do something everyone could afford. Wait, what? They're paying for Taylor to go. This was news to me. You didn't know? I assumed they'd mentioned it. Tara sounded uncomfortable now. Kyle told Ryan when they were golfing last weekend. Ryan mentioned it to me. Another revelation, another stab of pain. Somehow, my brother's girlfriend of 8 months merited inclusion in the family vacation while their daughter, did not. As my hurt calcified into anger, memories of other trips surfaced. The spring break vacation to Florida when I was 15, where Stephanie got her own room while I was put on a pull-out couch in the living room. The Christmas trip to Colorado where Kyle and Stephanie got ski lessons and equipment rentals while I was told to find something else fun to do because there wasn't enough in the budget for all 3 of us. The weekend trips to visit colleges where my parents took Stephanie and Kyle on official tours but told me to just look at the websites for the schools I was interested in. It wasn't a one-time occurrence. It was a lifelong pattern. And for the first time, I was ready to stop accepting it. A week after the dinner, my mother called to discuss some minor family matter. As we were about to hang up, she casually mentioned their trip planning. We got such a good deal through your father's company discount program, she said cheerfully. Nearly 30% off the entire package. The perks of him being with Marshall Financial for so long. That's great, I replied, my mind suddenly alert. Which program is that exactly? Is it something anyone can use? Oh, it's just for employees, she said dismissively. Corporate perks, you know. Anyway, I should go. Your father and I are meeting the travel agent in an hour. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone. My father's company discount program. A potential way in. I opened my laptop and typed Marshall Financial Employee Discounts into the search bar. Several results came up, including a corporate benefits website that required login credentials. There was also a Reddit thread where employees discussed the best perks of working for various financial institutions. One comment specifically mentioned Marshall's travel program. Marshall's partnership with Elite Journeys is the best perk by far, wrote the anonymous employee. The discounts are substantial, and it's not just for the employee, but extends to immediate family members as well. My sister used my code last year and saved nearly 40% on her honeymoon package. Immediate family members. According to this, I should have been eligible to use the discount through my father. Yet they hadn't offered it to me. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Diana Reynolds. We'd been roommates during my second year of college and had stayed loosely in touch over the years. If I remembered correctly, she now worked at Marshall Financial, had been there for at least 3 years. I hesitated before calling her. Was I really going to do this? Was I really planning to crash my family's vacation out of spite? But it wasn't spite, I realized. It was about finally standing up for myself, about refusing to accept being treated as less than. Diana answered on the third ring, sounding surprised but pleased to hear from me. We caught up briefly before I carefully broached the subject. I actually have a somewhat unusual favor to ask, I said. I've been looking at booking a vacation to Hawaii, and I remembered you work at Marshall Financial. I've heard they have a really good employee discount program for travel. Oh, Elite Journeys? Yeah, it's amazing. I've used it twice already. Diana's voice was enthusiastic. Are you looking to go through a family member who works here? That was the idea, I said vaguely, but there's been some confusion about eligibility. I was wondering if you could tell me how it actually works. Diana explained that employees could extend their discount to immediate family members, parents, siblings, children, and spouses. All they needed was a special code and verification of the relationship. If you're having trouble with your family members' access, I could probably help you out, she offered. It wouldn't be the first time someone did a favor for a friend. The company doesn't really monitor it closely. I thanked her and said I'd let her know. After hanging up, I sat in silence, contemplating my next move. Was I really considering using Diana's employee code to book the same vacation as my family? The same resort, the same dates? Before I could decide, my phone rang. It was Kyle. Hey, just checking in, he said. Haven't heard from you in a while. We chatted about his new job and my work before he brought up the vacation. So, have you reconsidered coming to Hawaii with us? It would be more fun with you there. I don't think $4,000 is in my budget right now, I reminded him gently. Yeah, I get that. It's a lot. I'm really grateful Mom and Dad are covering it for me and Taylor. She's so excited. She's never been to Hawaii before. I froze. They're paying for Taylor too. There was an uncomfortable pause. Yeah, I thought you knew that. Dad said since she's practically family now, it made sense to include her. Practically family. 8 months of dating versus 32 years of being their daughter. That's nice, I managed to say. I'm sure you'll all have a great time. After hanging up, I no longer had any reservations about my plan. I immediately called Diana back. I'd like to take you up on that offer, I said firmly. I'm looking at the Wailea Beach Resort in Maui, first 2 weeks of August. With Diana's help, I was able to book the exact same resort for the exact same dates, but with an even better room than what my parents had described, and at a substantial discount. Instead of $4,000, I paid just under $2,500. Still a significant expense, but one I could manage by dipping into my savings. As I completed the booking, I felt a mixture of anxiety and exhilaration. Was I being petty? Perhaps. But after years of accepting unequal treatment, this felt like an important stand to take. That evening, I met my new boyfriend Josh for dinner. We'd been dating for just over 3 months, but there was something different about him, a steadiness, a warmth that made me feel I could trust him with this situation. I did something today that's either very brave or very stupid, I confessed after our meals arrived. I explained the whole situation. The years of differential treatment, the vacation exclusion, and my plan to show up at the same resort. Wow, he said when I finished. That's quite a statement you're making. Too much? I asked, suddenly uncertain. He considered this carefully. I don't think so. From what you've described, this isn't about a single vacation. It's about a lifetime of being treated differently from your siblings. Sometimes people don't see patterns in their behavior until they're confronted with them directly. I was relieved by his understanding. I'm not trying to ruin their vacation. I just want them to see what they're doing. Have you thought about bringing someone with you? Josh asked. It might be easier to face them if you're not alone. I hadn't considered this. Are you volunteering? He smiled. I could be. I have vacation time saved up, and I've never been to Hawaii. Are you sure you want your first major trip with me to involve my family drama? I asked. Actually, Josh said, his expression growing more serious, I understand family dynamics like this better than you might think. My parents always favored my older brother, the athlete, the successful one. They made it clear from early on that he was their pride and joy while I was an afterthought. This revelation created a new bond between us. Josh wasn't just being supportive. He truly understood. And suddenly, the trip transformed from an act of defiance into something more. Not just a confrontation, but potentially the beginning of a healing journey that Josh and I could experience together. Let's do it, I said. Let's go to Hawaii. Over the next few weeks, I prepared for the trip while maintaining the illusion to my family that I had accepted my exclusion from their vacation. I requested time off work, bought new summer clothes, and researched activities in Maui. Josh and I decided to arrive 3 days before my family to enjoy some time alone before the inevitable confrontation. Throughout this period, I continued normal contact with my family. Sunday dinners, occasional phone calls. Nothing that would tip them off about my plans. 2 weeks before the trip, Stephanie invited me to lunch, to catch up. We met at a small cafe near her house, and for the first hour, the conversation was pleasant if superficial. She talked about her twins' latest achievements and her husband Mark's work stress. I shared amusing stories from the dental office. As we were finishing our meals, Stephanie's expression grew more serious. I wanted to check on you about the Hawaii trip, she said. Mom mentioned you were upset about the financial arrangements. Did she? I kept my voice neutral. What exactly did she say? Stephanie shifted uncomfortably. Just that you seemed disappointed that you couldn't join us. She feels bad about it, but you know how it is with money right now. I couldn't help myself.
Doi.
Because from where I'm sitting, there seems to be plenty of money for everyone else in the family. That's not fair, Amber, Stephanie protested. Kyle just started his career, and Mark and I have the twins to think about. You're established and independent. Independent because I've had to be, I pointed out. Because I've never received the same level of support as you and Kyle. Stephanie's face flushed. That's simply not true. Mom and Dad have always treated us equally. I laughed without humor. Equal? They paid your entire college tuition. I got half. They paid for your entire wedding. I'll probably elope to avoid debt. They helped you with a down payment on your house. I'm still renting. Those were different circumstances, Stephanie insisted. When I went to college, they had more disposable income. When you went, finances were tighter. And then magically loosened up again for Kyle? Come on, Stephanie. She fell silent, then said quietly, You don't know everything, Amber. Enlighten me. She hesitated, then said, Did you know they helped me with IVF treatments last year? This was news to me. No, I didn't. $25,000, she continued. That's how much they contributed to help us have the twins. It was a medical necessity. I processed this new information, feeling a fresh wave of hurt. Just 3 months before her IVF treatments, I had approached my parents about helping me refinance my student loans, which had a crippling interest rate. They had told me they simply didn't have extra funds to help. I'm glad they could help you start your family, I said finally. But it just further proves my point. When you or Kyle need something, they find the money. When I need something, there's suddenly nothing available. Stephanie looked genuinely confused. But you never seem to need anything. You're always so together. So capable. Because I've never had any other choice, I said softly. The lunch ended awkwardly, with Stephanie promising to think about what I'd said. I doubted it would lead anywhere, but at least I'd finally voiced some of my feelings out loud. That evening, Josh came over to help me pack. I told him about the conversation with Stephanie and the revelation about the IVF treatments. $25,000, I repeated, still in disbelief. While I was working extra shifts to pay off a $5,000 dental procedure. Josh listened thoughtfully. This reminds me of something I read about family dynamics. Have you ever heard of the concept of the family scapegoat? I hadn't, so Josh suggested we look it up together. We spent the evening reading articles about family psychology, particularly about roles that children often adopt or are assigned within dysfunctional family systems. The golden child gets praise and attention, the scapegoat bears the blame, and the forgotten child fades into the background, read one article. These roles can persist well into adulthood, shaping family interactions for decades. Another piece discussed how scapegoated children often develop a strong sense of independence as a survival mechanism, which paradoxically can be used to justify their continued marginalization. The family may point to the scapegoat's self-sufficiency as evidence that they don't need help, when in fact that self-sufficiency was developed precisely because help was withheld. It was like reading about my own life. For years, I'd internalized the idea that I was somehow less deserving of support than my siblings. I'd believed there was something inherently different about me that justified the disparity in treatment. Now I was beginning to see that the dynamics had been established long ago, and my independence was both a result of and a justification for my treatment. The next day, I called my friend Tara to share these insights. "I've been reading about family scapegoats," I told her. "It explains so much about my relationship with my parents." "I could have told you that years ago," Tara said. "I've watched how they treat you compared to your siblings. It's textbook favoritism." "The frustrating part is that I don't think they even realize they're doing it," I said. "They've justified it so completely in their minds that they can't see the pattern." "Which is exactly why your Hawaii plan is brilliant," Tara declared. "Sometimes people need a dramatic gesture to shake them out of their established patterns." A few days later, my mother called. "I've been thinking about the vacation," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone of martyrdom she often adopted. "If it's really important to you to join us, maybe we could help with part of your expenses. Perhaps cover the hotel portion." For a moment, I was tempted. It would be so much easier to accept this partial concession than to go through with my plan. But then I recognized it for what it was, not a genuine acknowledgement of the inequality, but a token gesture to make me stop complaining while maintaining the fundamental imbalance. "That's generous of you," I said carefully, "but I think I'll pass. I've made other arrangements for those weeks." "What arrangements?" she asked, immediately suspicious. "Just some plans with friends," I said vaguely. "Nothing concrete yet." "Well, the offer stands if you change your mind," she said, sounding both relieved and slightly disappointed. "We really would like to have the whole family together." After hanging up, I felt a renewed determination. This trip wasn't about revenge. It was about setting boundaries and demanding recognition. It was about finally disrupting a pattern that had defined my place in the family for as long as I could remember. As the departure date approached, I experienced waves of doubt and anxiety. What if this blew up in my face? What if it permanently damaged my relationship with my family? What if I was overreacting to what they saw as a minor issue? The night before our flight, I had a vivid dream about a childhood incident I'd almost forgotten. I was 10 years old, and my parents had taken us to an amusement park. When it came time for souvenirs, Stephanie was allowed to choose an expensive doll, and Kyle got a remote-controlled car. I was told to select from the clearance bin because we've spent enough today. In the dream, as in reality, I hadn't complained. I'd chosen a small keychain and pretended to be delighted with it. I woke up with tears on my face, but also with clarity. This pattern had been established decades ago, and it wouldn't change unless I forced the issue. The Hawaii plan wasn't petty, it was necessary. Josh and I arrived in Maui on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 days before my family was scheduled to check in. The flight had been long but uneventful, and as we stepped out of the airport into the warm Hawaiian air, I felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "It's really happening," I murmured as we waited for our shuttle to the resort. Josh squeezed my hand. "No second thoughts." "A million second thoughts," I admitted. "But I'm still going through with it." The Wailea Beach Resort exceeded all expectations. Our room was spacious and elegant, with a balcony overlooking the ocean. Palm trees swayed in the gentle breeze, and the sound of waves provided a constant, soothing backdrop. "Your family has good taste in vacation spots," Josh remarked as we explored the grounds. "They do," I agreed. "I just wish they thought I deserved to enjoy it with them." We spent the afternoon settling in and exploring the resort. At dinner that evening, we were seated at a table near the water with a spectacular view of the sunset. Our server was a young woman named Carolina, warm and attentive. "First time in Maui?" she asked as she brought our drinks. "First time in Hawaii at all," Josh replied. "You chose well," Carolina said. "This resort is special. Are you celebrating something?" "Not exactly," I said. "It's more of a personal journey." Something in my tone must have conveyed more than my words, because Carolina gave me a curious look. "Those are often the most important trips," she said thoughtfully. Over the course of the meal, we developed an easy rapport with Carolina. During a quiet moment, she confided that she'd moved to Hawaii 2 years ago after a difficult situation with her own family. "My parents always favor my brother," she explained when I asked what had brought her so far from home. "Everything was about his achievements, his needs. I was an afterthought. One day, I realized I could either keep trying to earn their approval or create a life where I didn't need it. So I packed up and moved 5,000 miles away." I was startled by how closely her experience mirrored my own. "Has it helped? Being so far from them?" "It gave me perspective," Carolina said. "Distance helped me see the dynamics more clearly and decide how much energy I wanted to invest in trying to change them." She smiled wryly. "Also, it's hard to stay angry when you live in paradise." By the end of the evening, I felt I'd found an unexpected ally. Carolina gave us her phone number and offered to help with recommendations for activities and restaurants during our stay. "If you need anything at all, just ask for me," she said as we left. "I work most evenings, but I'm free during the day if you want a local guide." The next 2 days were idyllic. Josh and I snorkeled in crystal-clear waters, hiked to a nearby waterfall, and relaxed on the beach. During these peaceful hours, I almost forgot about the confrontation looming on the horizon. On Thursday evening, I received a notification that my family had posted on social media. They were at the airport, about to board their flight to Maui. According to their itinerary, they would arrive late that night and check into the resort early Friday morning. "Tomorrow's the day," I told Josh as we sat on our balcony, watching the stars. "How are you feeling about it?" he asked. "Nervous. Resolute. A little sick to my stomach," I admitted. "Part of me wants to hide in the room until they leave." "We could," Josh said. "We could change our plans, avoid the common areas when they're likely to be there. This vacation could still be just about us." I considered this for a moment. It was tempting to avoid the confrontation, to enjoy our time in paradise without the family drama. But I knew that would defeat the purpose of coming. "No," I said finally. "I need to do this. Not out of spite, but because this pattern won't change unless I address it directly." "Then I'll be right beside you," Josh promised. That night, I barely slept. I kept imagining different scenarios for our first encounter. My parents' shock, Stephanie's indignation, Kyle's confusion. Would they be angry? Embarrassed? Would they understand what I was trying to communicate? Or would they just see it as an act of petty revenge? I scrolled through their social media updates. They had landed safely and were posting excited messages about the vacation ahead. My mother had shared a family photo from the airport with the caption, "Hawaii bound with our favorites. #FamilyVacation, #blessed." The photo showed my parents, Stephanie and her husband Mark, Kyle and his girlfriend Taylor, all smiling broadly. The absence of any mention that one family member was missing spoke volumes. The next morning, we learned from Carolina, who had become our inside source at the resort, that my family had checked in around midnight and were likely to have breakfast at the main restaurant around 9 a.m. "Is 9 a.m. when you'd like your breakfast reservation as well?" she asked with a knowing smile. I took a deep breath. "Yes, I think that would be perfect." At 8:45, Josh and I took a table in the restaurant with a clear view of the entrance. I was too nervous to eat much, just sipping my coffee and watching the door. Josh kept up a steady stream of light conversation, trying to distract me from my anxiety. At precisely 9:12, they walked in, my entire family looking relaxed and vacation-ready in their resort wear. My father was leading the group, followed by my mother, then Stephanie and Mark, and finally Kyle and Taylor. I felt Josh's hand close over mine on the table. "Ready?" he asked quietly. I nodded, my heart pounding. And then, before I could lose my nerve, I raised my hand and called out, "Mom."
"Dad."
"Over here." If you've ever been waiting for that pivotal moment in your life, you know exactly how I felt right then. Sitting in that Hawaiian restaurant, waiting for my family to notice me when they thought I was thousands of miles away, my heart was racing so fast I could barely breathe. This wasn't just about a vacation anymore. It was about years of feeling less valued than my siblings. Have you ever stood up for yourself in a way that terrified you, but you knew was absolutely necessary? If you're nodding right now, you understand what was at stake for me. Drop a comment below about a time you had to confront your family about something important. I read every single one. And if you're new here, subscribe to join our community of people healing from family wounds. Now, let me tell you what happened when my family finally spotted me across that restaurant. 6 heads turned simultaneously in my direction. The sequence of emotions that crossed their faces would have been comical under different circumstances: confusion, shock, disbelief, and then various shades of discomfort. Kyle was the first to recover. "Amber," he exclaimed, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "What are you doing here?" I stood up as they approached our table. "Surprise," I said, trying to keep my voice light. I decided I wanted to see Hawaii after all. My mother's expression was frozen somewhere between a smile and a grimace. "What a coincidence," she managed to say. "Not exactly a coincidence," I replied. "I heard so much about this resort that I decided to book it for the same dates. I hope that's okay." My father cleared his throat awkwardly. "Of course it's okay. We're just surprised." Stephanie was less diplomatic. "How did you even afford this?" she asked, her tone implying that it was impossible for me to be there legitimately. "I got a great discount," I said pleasantly. "Nearly 40% off the regular price. The same employee discount program that Dad used, actually." My parents exchanged an uncomfortable glance. My father's brow furrowed. "Through Marshall Financial?" "But how? I have a friend who works there," I explained. "She was kind enough to extend her employee discount to me." Apparently, the policy allows for immediate family members to use it. Isn't that interesting? The implication hung in the air. My parents could have offered me the same discount they'd used themselves, but had chosen not to. An awkward silence fell over the group. Josh stood up and extended his hand to my father. "I'm Josh Sullivan. It's nice to meet you all. Amber has told me a lot about you." My father shook his hand automatically. "Nice to meet you too. We didn't realize Amber was bringing someone." "Last-minute decision," Josh said easily. "When she told me about the trip, I couldn't pass up the opportunity." My mother seemed to recover her social graces. "Well, this is a pleasant surprise. Would you like to join us for breakfast?" I glanced at Josh, who nodded slightly. "We'd love to," I said. The staff pushed 2 tables together to accommodate our now larger group. I ended up seated between Josh and Kyle, with my parents directly across from me. The conversation was stilted at first, with everyone carefully avoiding the elephant in the room. Kyle, bless him, made a genuine effort to integrate Josh and me into the vacation plans. "We were thinking of doing a snorkeling tour tomorrow," he said. "You two should come with us." Before I could respond, my mother interjected, "But I'm sure Amber and Josh have their own plans. We wouldn't want to impose." "Actually," I said, "we don't have anything specific planned for tomorrow. A snorkeling tour sounds great." And so it was arranged, despite my mother's evident discomfort. After breakfast, we all headed to the beach. Josh and I had already been there for 2 days and knew the best spots, which put us in the unexpected position of playing tour guides. As the day progressed, the initial shock of my presence seemed to wear off, at least for Kyle and Taylor, who were genuinely friendly. Stephanie and Mark maintained a polite distance, occasionally exchanging whispers that I pretended not to notice. My parents were the most difficult to read, outwardly cordial, but with an underlying tension that was palpable. In the afternoon, Josh and I excused ourselves to go back to our room for a while. As we walked away, I overheard my mother's voice, not quite quiet enough. I can't believe she would ambush us like this. What is she trying to prove? My father's response was too low to hear, but his tone sounded defensive. Back in our room, I collapsed onto the bed. That was even more awkward than I expected. Josh sat beside me. But you're holding your ground. They're the ones who should feel uncomfortable, not you. I know. It's just hard to be seen as the troublemaker for pointing out something that's been hurting me for years. We rejoined the family for dinner at one of the resort's restaurants. The atmosphere was slightly more relaxed after everyone had had time to adjust to the situation. Kyle and Taylor made a point of engaging Josh in conversation, asking about his work as a physical therapist and his hobbies. My father maintained a careful neutrality, while my mother alternated between forced cheerfulness and thinly veiled disapproval. Midway through the meal, Stephanie asked the question that had clearly been bothering her all day. I still don't understand why you didn't just tell us you were coming. I set down my fork and looked her directly in the eye. Would you really like to know? Something in my tone made the entire table go quiet. Yes, Stephanie said, lifting her chin slightly. I would. I took a deep breath. I didn't tell you because I wanted you all to experience what it feels like to be surprised and excluded. Just like I felt when you planned a family vacation and then informed me I could only join if I paid thousands of dollars that no one else was being asked to pay. That's not fair, Amber, my mother said sharply. Your siblings have different financial circumstances. Do they? I countered. Stephanie and Mark both have good jobs and only had to pay for themselves. I have a single income and was expected to pay the full amount. How is that accounting for different financial circumstances? We've always helped the kids who needed it most, my father interjected. That's all. And who decided I didn't need it? I asked. Who decided that Kyle needed his entire college education paid for while I only deserve half? Who decided that Stephanie deserved help with a down payment on a house while I'm still paying off student loans? Who decided that Taylor, no offense Taylor, merited inclusion in this trip while I didn't? Taylor looked deeply uncomfortable. None taken. I actually didn't realize. It's not just about this trip, I continued, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. It's about a lifetime of being treated differently from my siblings. It's about always being the one expected to manage on my own while they receive support. That's ridiculous, Stephanie said. You're playing the victim over normal family differences. Am I? I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. Let's look at the facts. College tuition, Stephanie, 100% covered. Kyle, 100% covered. Amber, 50% covered. Wedding expenses, Stephanie, $30,000. Kyle, not applicable yet. Amber, not applicable yet but already told. Weddings are expensive these days, so don't expect much. Housing assistance, Stephanie, down payment help. Kyle, subsidized rent. Amber, 0. Medical expenses, Stephanie, $25,000 for IVF. Kyle. Full insurance coverage under parents planned until age 26. Amber, denied help with a $5,000 dental procedure. Shall I continue? A heavy silence fell over the table. My father looked genuinely shocked, as if seeing these disparities laid out so plainly had never occurred to him before. My mother's face had flushed red. You've been keeping score all these years? She asked, her voice tight. I didn't have to keep score, I replied quietly. These are just the facts of my life, the realities I've lived with while watching my siblings receive support that was never extended to me. We've always treated all our children equally, my father insisted, but there was a note of uncertainty in his voice now. I think what Amber is trying to say, Josh interjected gently, is that her experience has been very different from what you intended. Whether or not you meant to create these disparities, they exist and they've hurt her. Kyle, who had been quiet during this exchange, finally spoke up. I never realized. I knew you paid for more things for me than for Amber, but I didn't see the whole pattern. Unexpectedly, it was Taylor who came to my defense. I think what Amber is describing makes sense, she said carefully. My parents did something similar with my brother and me. They paid for his car, but told me to save up for my own. They helped with his apartment, but expected me to figure out my housing. It creates resentment over time. Stephanie remained defensive. So, what was your plan here? Show up and ruin our vacation with accusations. No, I said firmly. My plan was to finally make visible what's been invisible for years. To stop accepting treatment that hurts me. To ask for acknowledgement and change. By ambushing us in Hawaii, my mother asked incredulously. By refusing to be excluded from yet another family experience, I corrected. By showing up and claiming my place in this family, whether or not you think I've earned it. The dinner ended shortly after, with everyone retreating to their rooms in various states of distress. As Josh and I walked back to our room, I felt both vindicated and devastated. I had finally said what needed to be said, but the cost was high. Do you think I went too far? I asked Josh as we reached our door. No, he said firmly. You spoke your truth without attacking them. What happens next is up to them. That night, I barely slept, replaying the dinner conversation in my mind and wondering if I had irreparably damaged my relationship with my family. Had standing up for myself been worth it? Only time would tell. The next morning, Josh and I decided to have breakfast in our room, giving everyone space to process what had happened. Around 10 a.m., I received a text from Kyle. Still on for the snorkeling tour? Meeting in the lobby at 11. I was surprised that the plans were proceeding. Are you sure everyone still wants us to come? I texted back. Taylor and I definitely do, came the reply. Not sure about the others. Mom and Dad are being weird. Stephanie and Mark might skip altogether. After discussing it with Josh, we decided to go. If nothing else, it would show that I wasn't trying to avoid my family or ruin their vacation. I just wanted equal treatment. When we arrived in the lobby, only Kyle and Taylor were waiting. The others are taking a day to relax at the resort, Kyle explained, making air quotes. But I really want you guys to come with us. The snorkeling tour turned out to be a blessing. Away from the tense family dynamics, the four of us were able to enjoy the natural beauty of Hawaii. Swimming alongside colorful fish and sea turtles provided a welcome distraction from the emotional turmoil of the previous evening. During a break on the boat, Kyle pulled me aside. I've been thinking a lot about what you said last night, he admitted. I never realized how different things were for you. I guess I was too focused on my own stuff. It's not your fault, I assured him. You didn't create the dynamic. Maybe not, but I benefited from it without questioning it, he said. And there's something else you should know. He hesitated, then continued. I found out recently that Mom and Dad helped Stephanie buy a second home last year. A vacation property in Lake Tahoe. They put down almost $100,000. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. A second home? While I was scraping together a security deposit for my apartment. Kyle nodded grimly. I only found out because Dad asked me for investment advice about shifting some assets to free up the cash. It was supposed to be a secret, I think.
I'm sorry, Amber.
It's even worse than you realized. I was still processing this information when we returned to the resort in the afternoon. As Josh and I walked across the pool area toward our room, I spotted my mother sitting alone at a table under an umbrella. She saw me at the same moment and, after a brief hesitation, raised her hand in a tentative wave. I think your mom wants to talk, Josh observed. Do you want me to stay with you or give you some space? I'll be okay on my own, I decided. Maybe it's better if we talk one-on-one. Josh squeezed my hand and continued to our room while I approached my mother's table. May I join you? I asked formally. Please, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. For a moment, we sat in silence, the sound of waves and laughing vacationers filling the space between us. I thought we should clear the air, my mother finally said. Last night was uncomfortable for everyone. It was uncomfortable for me too, I acknowledged. But sometimes discomfort is necessary for growth. My mother sighed. Amber, I don't understand why you're doing this now. If you've felt this way for years, why bring it up during what was supposed to be a relaxing family vacation? When would be a good time to bring it up? I asked genuinely. At Christmas, when everyone's focused on celebration. At a regular family dinner, when everyone would just leave and go back to their lives without really thinking about it. I needed your full attention to address something this important. But to plan it this way, to deliberately surprise us. The way I was surprised to learn I was the only one expected to pay for this trip? The way I was surprised to learn you were paying for Taylor but not for me? The way I've been surprised over and over again to discover the support given to my siblings that was never offered to me. My mother had the grace to look uncomfortable. We never meant to make you feel less valued, Amber. We thought you were more independent, more capable. I became independent because I had to, I said softly. Not because I wanted to be treated differently. I suppose we never looked at it that way, she admitted. Your father and I always prided ourselves on responding to each of you according to your needs. Stephanie needed more guidance, Kyle needed more protection, and you always seemed to figure things out on your own. Because I wasn't given any other option, I pointed out. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. You gave me less support, which forced me to become more self-sufficient, which you then used as justification for giving me even less support. My mother was quiet for a long moment. I don't know what to say, Amber. I can't change the past.
I'm not asking you to change the past.
I'm asking you to acknowledge the pattern and to change how things work going forward. What would that look like to you? She asked, and for the first time, I felt she was truly listening. Equal treatment, I said simply. Not identical. I understand we all have different circumstances, but equitable. Consideration of my needs the same way you consider Stephanie's and Kyle's. Inclusion in family experiences without conditions that don't apply to everyone else. My mother nodded slowly. I need to think about all this. And talk to your father. It's a lot to process. It wasn't the resolution I'd hoped for, but it was a start. We parted with an awkward hug, and I returned to my room feeling emotionally drained but cautiously optimistic. That evening, my father sought me out. I was sitting alone on the beach, watching the sunset, when he approached and asked if he could join me. Your mother told me about your conversation, he began. I want you to know that I've been doing some thinking of my own since last night. He looked out at the ocean, his profile outlined against the golden sky. I've always tried to be a good father, to give each of you what you needed. But I'm beginning to see that my perception of what you needed might have been flawed. In what way? I prompted when he fell silent. I think I mistook your resilience for not needing support, he said slowly. When you figured things out on your own, I felt proud rather than questioning why you had to. When you didn't complain about disparities that, frankly, I should have noticed myself, I interpreted it as acceptance rather than resignation. It was the most insightful thing I'd ever heard my father say about our relationship. I appreciate you saying that, I told him. It means a lot to hear you acknowledge it. I can't promise we'll get everything right going forward, he continued. Old habits are hard to break. But I can promise that I'll be more conscious of these patterns and try to do better. That's all I'm asking for, I said. Awareness and effort. He nodded, then added, Kyle mentioned he told you about Stephanie's second home. I want you to know that wasn't my idea. Your mother felt strongly that they needed help with that purchase, and I went along with it. But I see now how it fits into the larger pattern you've described. We sat together until the sun disappeared below the horizon, not solving everything but at least beginning to address the decades-long dynamic that had shaped our relationship. The remainder of the vacation was neither completely comfortable nor entirely uncomfortable. We attempted another family dinner the following night, with marginally better results. Stephanie remained somewhat defensive, but made an effort to be civil. Kyle and Taylor continued to be genuinely friendly. My parents were trying, in their imperfect way, to process what I'd brought to light. Before the trip ended, we managed one successful group excursion, a sunset cruise that somehow felt symbolic of the changes beginning to take place in our family. As we watched the sky transform from blue to orange to purple, I realized that this confrontation, painful as it had been, was just the first step in a long process of healing and recalibration. Josh and I decided to leave a day earlier than planned, partly to have some time to ourselves before returning to regular life and partly to give my family space to enjoy their final day without the tension my presence still sometimes created. As we said our goodbyes, each interaction revealed something about the road ahead. Kyle hugged me tightly and whispered, "I'm on your side in this. I'll help them see." Stephanie's embrace was brief but genuine, and she made a point of saying she'd call me when she got home. My mother kissed my cheek and said, "We'll do better," which wasn't quite an apology, but was perhaps as close as she could come at that moment. My father hugged me last, holding on a bit longer than usual, and simply said, "Thank you for your honesty." It wasn't perfect resolution, but it was movement, the first shift in a pattern that had seemed immutable for most of my life. 1 month after returning from Hawaii, I invited my family to dinner at my apartment. It was the first time we'd all be together since the vacation, and I was both nervous and hopeful about how the evening would unfold. I'd spent the day preparing, cooking my father's favorite lasagna, and setting my small dining table as nicely as my limited collection of dishes would allow. Josh arrived early to help, his steady presence calming my nerves. "Remember," he said as we arranged a bouquet of flowers in the center of the table, "whatever happens tonight, you've already changed the dynamic. The old pattern is broken, even if the new one isn't fully formed yet." My family arrived more or less together, bearing wine and dessert. The initial greetings were slightly awkward but not tense, and as we settled into conversation over appetizers, I noticed subtle differences in how everyone interacted with me. Kyle made a point of asking about my work and actually listening to my response, rather than quickly shifting the conversation to his own career as he might have done in the past. Stephanie, while still somewhat reserved, had brought photos of the twins to show me and mentioned possibly getting together for coffee the following week, a small gesture of inclusion that felt significant. The most notable changes were in my parents. My father asked my opinion about a financial matter he was dealing with, treating me as a competent adult rather than the perpetual child who needed less guidance than his other children. My mother had brought a small gift, a bracelet she'd seen that reminded her of one I'd admired years ago, a thoughtfulness that had typically been reserved for Stephanie. As we moved to the table for dinner, the conversation turned naturally to family news and updates. Kyle mentioned he was considering a job change, and my parents expressed support without immediately offering financial assistance as they might have in the past. When Stephanie talked about the twins' preschool options, there was no automatic assumption that my parents would contribute to the costs. Midway through the meal, my father cleared his throat in the way he always did when preparing to make an announcement. "Your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking since Hawaii," he began, glancing at her for confirmation. She nodded for him to continue. "We realize that there have been inequities in how we've supported each of you over the years. We can't change the past, but we can try to create more balance going forward." I set down my fork, my full attention on my father. "To that end," he continued, "we've decided to set up trust funds for each of you. Equal amounts, to be used however you choose: education, housing, retirement, whatever matters to you. We've already spoken with our financial advisor to begin the process." I was stunned into silence. Equal trust funds? After years of disparity, this was a tangible acknowledgement of the pattern and a concrete step toward correction. "Thank you," I said finally. "That's incredibly generous." "It's not about generosity," my mother interjected. "It's about fairness. Something we should have prioritized all along." I felt tears threatening and blinked them back. It wasn't just about the money. It never had been. It was about being valued equally, about having my needs considered with the same care as my siblings. This gesture, while financial in nature, represented a deeper shift in how my parents saw me within the family. After dinner, as we enjoyed coffee and the cheesecake Stephanie had brought, Kyle raised his mug in a small toast. "To new beginnings," he said, looking directly at me. "And to my sister Amber, who had the courage to speak up when the rest of us were comfortable with the status quo." There was a murmur of agreement around the table, even from Stephanie, who had been the most resistant to acknowledging the pattern. She caught my eye and gave me a small, almost apologetic smile. Later, after everyone had left, Josh helped me clean up the kitchen. "That went better than I expected," I admitted as I loaded the dishwasher. "They're trying," he agreed. "It's a process, but they're making an effort." The following week, Tara and I met for our regular Saturday morning coffee. I filled her in on the dinner and the surprising announcement about the trust funds. "I have to say, I'm impressed," Tara said. "I didn't think your parents had it in them to really change." "I'm not sure they would have without the Hawaii confrontation," I reflected. Sometimes you have to disrupt the peace to create real change. "Speaking of Hawaii," Tara said with a sly smile, "how are things with Josh?" That trip was a pretty intense experience to share so early in a relationship. I couldn't help smiling.
It's going really well, actually.
I think seeing each other handle a difficult situation brought us closer. He's been amazing through all of this. Over the next few months, the shifts in my family dynamics continued to evolve. There were still moments of falling back into old patterns, my mother occasionally making thoughtless comparisons between my choices and Stephanie's, my father sometimes forgetting to include me in certain conversations. But now, when these lapses occurred, they were recognized and corrected, either by my parents themselves or by Kyle, who had become an unexpected ally in maintaining the new balance. Stephanie and I were slowly building a more authentic relationship. Without the unconscious competition fostered by our parents' favoritism, we were discovering common ground we hadn't recognized before. She invited me to the twins' birthday party, something that might have been an afterthought in the past, and made a point of introducing me to her friends as her sister, with genuine warmth. 3 months after Hawaii, my mother sent a group text to the family with a link to a beach house rental in North Carolina. "Thinking about a family trip next summer," she wrote. "Everyone welcome. Expenses shared equally or covered for all. Thoughts?" It was a small thing, perhaps, but it represented a fundamental change in approach: explicit inclusion, transparent financial expectations, and consideration of everyone's input from the beginning. That evening, as I scrolled through old photos on my phone, I came across the Hawaii pictures that had been shared in our family group chat. Among them were several that included Josh and me, integrated into the family narrative rather than excluded from it. In one, all of us were gathered on the beach at sunset, the tension of those days not visible in our smiles. It wasn't a false image. There had been moments of genuine connection amid the confrontation and discomfort. I sent the photo to Josh with a message: "Look how far we've come." His reply came quickly: "And it all started because you were brave enough to say no to the old pattern and yes to your own worth." He was right. By declining to participate in my own marginalization, by saying no thanks to the unequal invitation and creating my own path to inclusion, I had disrupted a family system that had seemed immutable. The Hawaii plan hadn't been about revenge. It had been about visibility, about refusing to remain in the role that had been assigned to me years ago. As I prepared for bed that night, my phone chimed with another text. It was from my father, sent just to me. "Just wanted to say I'm proud of you, Amber. Not just for your accomplishments, but for your strength of character. It couldn't have been easy to confront us the way you did in Hawaii, but it was necessary. Thank you for giving us the chance to do better." I read the message 3 times, tears blurring my vision. After years of feeling less valued, less important, less worthy of support and attention, this simple acknowledgement of my courage felt like the closing of a circle. The pattern wasn't completely broken. It would take years of conscious effort from all of us to fully reshape our family dynamics, but we had begun the journey toward a more balanced, honest relationship. And it had all started with 2 simple words: no thanks. When I look back at that moment when my parents told me I could join their family vacation if I paid my own way, I realize how pivotal my response was. Saying no thanks and then taking matters into my own hands completely transformed my place in my family. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is refuse to accept unfair treatment, even when it comes from the people who are supposed to love us most. If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help others find it. I'd love to hear in the comments about a time when you had to stand up to family inequality or set boundaries with loved ones. Your experiences might help someone else find the courage to speak up. Subscribe if you want more stories about navigating complex family dynamics and finding your voice. And please share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to say no thanks to unfair treatment, even from family. Thank you for listening to my journey. Remember, Fair treatment isn't something you should have to earn from the people who claim to love you. It should be the foundation of every family relationship. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.